This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Where you go, Auburn fans? Welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and unfortunately, Jared was not able to join, scheduling conflict, but I did bring on a very familiar voice to many of you, Kyle Loomis. How you doing, Kyle?
Oh, just doing what apparently is you and I's lot in life. The co-hosts go away. We have to have each other on each other's show. So we might have to have a sit-down discussion with Jared and Austin. Talk about these little vacations they keep taking from us.
Well, this one apparently was not, it was like a team meeting, but for parents with one of his kids. And I was like, ooh, this sounds spicy.
I was about to say, this doesn't sound like this is a good thing at all for anybody involved in that situation. A team parent meeting.
Yeah. So Jared was curious. I'll have to catch up with him to hear why he's not coming on and talking about the New Mexico game with me. Because guess what? We won it. And Jared has lacked, I know Kyle, I've talked to Jared about this, but he has lacked hearing and being a part of enough wins since he's been on here the last 3 years, just because of the rough seasons we've had. So I feel like he's just missing out. He's missing out on a fun win.
Yeah, that's what happens when you got to go to team parent meetings. You miss out on wins. They do occur from time to time for Auburn, actually more often than not, believe it or not. I know it doesn't feel like it these last couple of years, but, traditionally the trend is Auburn wins football games. And thankfully, as has continued to be the tradition under Freeze rather than Harsin, we do not struggle, at least for the full game, in our homecoming game. So I'm happy to say that all temperatures are cooled now in terms of last week's. Well, I shouldn't say all temperatures, but I would say things are much more pleasant after this game than they were last week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's blood pressure, temperatures for feeling towards Hugh Freeze, should he be on the hot seat and whatnot, went straight up after the Cal game. And I think once this game really kind of settled in, I mean, Auburn did what Auburn needed to do, but it felt like it took way too long to get there. I mean, at half, it was a 3 or 4 point game. And you look at the end of the score, you have 45-19, and you're thinking, oh, Auburn just blew out New Mexico. Well, I don't know about you, Kyle, but I did not feel that way. And you know what? That's sometimes Auburn games go, and I have to kind of be okay with that sometimes.
Yeah, look, it's a roller coaster ride, and they love to make your heart rate go up. But that's the nature of being an Auburn family member. Well, at least I hope you understand that. You can always tell the people who haven't been in this ride very much longer than a couple of years, because they don't know how to handle this. Or as I like to, I don't like to create divisions within the Auburn family, but there is a certain group that you can tell that is post the championship year that jumped on board after that or born after that, and that's all they've known. If you've been around for a while, this is just what we do. For some reason, we'll play down to our opponents. We'll play up to the opponents as well. It's just the way things are. But thankfully, we're not giving Alabama fans any more fodder around their favorite new phrase, New Mexico State. You could just hear them salivating, the dripping of salivation from Alabama fans when they looked up and saw that we were a little bit closer than comfort to New Mexico for some time.
I definitely would have. I mean, if I was them looking at the score, thinking this might be another terrible game, and Hugh Freeze would definitely, if we had lost to New Mexico, been on the extreme hot seat. Maybe not as much as like Mike Norvell or like the big ones that are on the hot seat right now, but he definitely have hopped on there.
I did want to. Anytime you lose the homecoming game, the temperature does turn up, but he had plenty of time to save himself, but as you're right, some other coaches are having a much worse time.
Yeah, for sure. I did want to give a quick update on just the different games that Jared and I have been playing for this season. So one of them is the score predictions and essentially how far off are you. And this was one that I think both Jared and I think it was 14 points for me, 17 points for Jared or something like that. So we were thinking, I think we were brought back down to earth after Cal. And surprisingly, our team ended up beating New Mexico by 26 points. So
Uh-huh.
it's a good turnout, for us. And our kind of little game right now, I'm 1 point behind Jared in that.
I see
So,
that.
well, this is going to be a tight one. I feel like Jared and I typically have kind of similar responses when it comes to how much we're thinking we're going to win. So I might have to take some big leaps to every once in a while, just see if I can make that difference in
Yeah,
my favor.
At some point, everybody's got to be a little bit brave, and take
Yeah.
some risk and, throw a Hank Brown in there and sling that ball around a little bit better. So,
Oh yeah.
So pull a Hank Brown this week and see what happens.
Maybe. The other game that we had, and man, Jared's on fire on this game. He is 2 of 2 in picking the top offensive threat. And again, reminder for the listeners, it essentially looks at who scores the most touchdowns, and if there's people that score the same number of touchdowns, then it looks at yards. And so Jared chose Jarquez, so he had the most touchdowns and yards. So good for them. Glad Jared got that, and I am sitting great at 0 right now in that game. So I got some room to make up.
Yeah, you do.
This next week. But let's get into just a couple other pieces of news before we dive into the New Mexico game. Over the weekend, we had Elijah Melendez, which funny thing is, I have a friend literally named Elijah Melendez who played college athletics. So
Wow.
I was like, what are the odds? Obviously, I texted the dude and was like, I'm sure this isn't you. I looked at the picture of the dude that we're recruiting. This is not you. But how hilarious is this? But it's awesome. We got a 4-star, and my goodness, I think you and I think I heard you and Austin salivating over him.
No, whoa. We were not salivating over a 17 and 18-year-old child. No. We were simply noting. If any of you guys have seen, I think his name is Hayes Fawcett for On3, who makes all the edits and gets the big announcements a lot of the times these days from these kids. He put an edit together of him with the shirt off, looking all jacked up, and we used that image on our live video show. And we said it would probably go over about as well as this segment is going over right now.
Yep.
About how awkward that would be, because AJ is painting us in a certain way. I just said, look, I mean, it's the image, that's what it is, and he's very obviously proud of himself, and he looks like a beast. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to dig myself out of that hole.
I just wanted to throw you for a loop there. I mean, that wasn't. I mean, I saw the exact same picture you saw, and I was thinking that's an interesting way to announce. But here we are, and if I looked as good as him, I'd probably post the same thing and be proud of it.
This segment's just making me uncomfortable. I'm kidding. I mean, we could talk about it. Look, it's a big commit, okay? Miami we flipped a lot of guys from prominent schools in this class and in this cycle, and this just continuing to be what Hugh Freeze, one of his big selling points was, I'm going to come in here and I'm known for my recruiting, and that's not going to change while I'm here. And he's able to do that with people he just gets outright or he flips. Yeah. And this is just another feather in the cap of one Hugh Freeze.
Yep. And just a quick update. I was looking at 247 Sports. We're number 4 in the 2025 class now. And in On3, on their recruiting rankings, we're number 5. So
yeah,
4 or 5. I would absolutely take that. I think we're up to 24 commitments, which anytime you get above 20 already before you get close to, the early signing period, it's a really great thing. Just kind of shows the momentum of where this recruiting is. I mean, we've seen it, and it's going to continue for Auburn.
Yep, definitely.
Let's talk about some just big picture things here from the New Mexico game. I think, first off, the game took 4 hours, it felt like. And I don't know about you at the game. It felt like it took forever as a fan. But it just felt like this game lasted forever and ever and ever. And partially refs, partially penalties that both sides definitely did. I mean, Hugh Freeze even talked about he's just annoyed essentially with all of the different penalties Auburn's having. I mean, we had 8 penalties for 88 yards. New Mexico had 16 penalties.
Yes.
I looked, they are dead last at penalties per game in the whole nation. So
that's pretty bad.
Rough. That's rough. But I think it all combined into both teams commit a lot of penalties. It just kept going on and on. We had multiple times where it felt like there was 5 minutes between plays because it felt like the refs didn't know what was going on. There was too many penalties on one play. It was wild. Oh, man, sigh of relief that this game is over, because that I was just ready. It was an evening game. I was ready to go home and just be done with this game.
Well, and the other thing too is if Auburn had wow, use your words, Kyle. Act like you're a podcaster or something. It had established itself earlier in the game and just put New Mexico away much earlier. Yeah, you probably still have some sloppy play. I mean, there's weather factor in all of these things, but maybe the refs start letting things go a little bit more. And you want to call a fair game and a close game when you've got two teams in general, but two teams locked in at some points, competitive battle here. But you wonder if some of these other factors didn't play into that. But it did. It lingered and lingered and lingered. And thankfully, we're back home today resting, or else we probably still would have been there if they kept calling penalties the way they were.
Yeah, my goodness. It just felt like forever. But we made it through. And we got to experience the start of the Hank Brown era at quarterback. And I think that was obviously the big talking point of everybody, and rightly so. You know, you go from an established captain like Peyton Thorne, who's been talked up by me, you, others, and he's, showing the poise that you would expect. And I think after, the Cal game, some changes were made that Hank Brown got the opportunity, and it looks like, at least for the next game, Hank should get the start according to Hugh Freeze. And that doesn't mean he's going to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season by any means, but I think it just shows Hank Brown has stepped up to the plate in every way possible. Hugh Freeze has said so himself. We saw it as fans, and I'm excited to get behind Hank. I am a big fan of whoever's at quarterback. It really doesn't matter. And if Hank Brown's our guy and he's doing well, let's go. Let's ride with him.
Yeah, and I think Pat Dye said it best. It doesn't matter who's running the ball, passing the ball, just as long as he's got a blue jersey on. I think that's what's missed a lot in conversations and discussions that are not had best online and stuff like that, because people think they can say things about people that they'd never say to that subject they're talking about, or to the people that they're discussing it with faces, because they're so brave behind their anonymous accounts. But I think that's what's missed a lot of the time. I as someone who will defend anybody who goes out there at any position for Auburn, that doesn't mean that they're above constructive criticism. And my rule of thumb is, if the coach says they're out there, they know all the information. I know very little of it, and nobody else knows very little. And I should say everybody else outside of the coaching staff, the players, knows very little compared to those within it about that situation. So if coach deems that a change needs to be made, I'm all on board with it, and I'm going to support who's out there. What I also think is important for people to have here is context, and not over posturing because you wanted to be right about Hank Brown. Folks, he just competed against one of the worst defenses in FBS and did what he was supposed to do. May I remind you that Peyton Thorne did the exact same thing, if not better, against an FCS school. We don't know how they would stack up. It is FCS versus FBS, but let's just call it two not very good teams, at least defensively. They they are who we thought they were, is what the old coach said from the NFL. So they both took care of business. Now, what's going to be interesting, and I know we're on New Mexico State, is when we get to look at Hank Brown post Arkansas against SEC level defense, when and if and when, because I'm hoping and expecting he will have a great game against them, then we can all look at the two different bodies of work against a bad team or a bad defense and a better defense and go, all right, we now have the information to make a fair comparison based so far on the season. And I think that's where people need to rest on and stop over posturing, just so you can say that I told you so about Hank Brown. How many of those DMs do you think I got?
Oh, so many, I'm sure.
Yeah, and they're all like 12 years old, or at least they act like it online. Anyway, I'm not salty whatsoever.
Well, I mean, who is the most popular? It's always the backup quarterback, right? Especially when the starting quarterback is struggling, and Peyton was struggling. Let me just say, as much as I think Hank Brown did really good,
And he did, yeah.
I mean, it's nice to know we have Peyton Thorne, who when Peyton Thorne is cool, calm, and collected. He is one of the best quarterbacks. It's just when he's out there throwing interceptions or making bad decisions, that's when that's the bad side of Peyton Thorne. And not to say Hank Brown, he's literally remind you he's a true or redshirt freshman.
Right.
He will make many mistakes, and you will see them, and likely, especially against somebody, we'll talk about it against Arkansas. That's an SEC opponent. Their secondary is going to be better than New Mexico's secondary. So the struggles are going to come. But hey, Hank Brown got off to a great start, had 4 touchdown passes to 4 different players. You love to see all the distribution of what he did with passing the ball around, and in honestly not so great of passing situations where it was still kind of wet out there, or it was actually raining.
Right. And I think that's a big piece here too, is conversations around quarterbacks always need to take into account, not to make excuses for them, but to talk about what's happening around them, whether it's about support or lack thereof from certain positions, or conditions like the wet footballs that were out there. I mean, he had several underthrown or just slipped out of his hand balls that maybe he should have thought better not to throw in that moment, or it just was a pure accident. Things happen. So I thought all in all, a great night for him, and exactly what you expected out of him. I saw some things I expected to see out of him, and I saw some things that I wasn't expecting to see out of him in some touch throw situations. That was very nice to see. So I'm very pleased and happy with his performance in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, I want to know, have you ever seen the rain? I had to put that one in there.
Stick to your day job,
beautiful.
buddy. American Idol is not in your future. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, I have my wife to always laugh at my crazy singing for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. I love being just that type of person. So you got to self-deprecate every once in a while,
Every once in a while, yeah.
All right. So a couple other things, just standout plays. Obviously, there were some big touchdowns. One of the big passes from Hank Brown, which I thought was a good sign of maturity, was just a check down to Jarquez. And Jarquez did what he needed to do. You put the ball in your playmaker's hands, and guess what? Jarquez gets into the end zone there. Another great one was in the back of the end zone with Micah Riley.
Yeah,
you love to see that. Man, so beautiful. And that's, again, kind of not the best secondary, but hey, it's steps in the right direction. It's kind of building that momentum heading into some pretty formidable SEC play, considering how many teams in the SEC are doing so well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jarquez came out, balled out, 152 yards rushing on 20 carries, averaged 7.6 yards per carry and a touchdown. He also had the reception that we just talked about. I mean, my goodness, Jarquez, it's beautiful to see him hitting his stride so early in the season. It felt like last season it took him, felt like half the season before I felt like Jarquez was himself. And you're already seeing Jarquez do what we all know he's capable of. I mean, Hugh Freeze has said it. He's the most talented running back you think he's ever coached, and it's showing.
20 carries, 152 yards, 7.6 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and that catch you already mentioned. You can't have a much better night than that, outside of having those just freakish nights that Trey Mason used to have, where he's busting 200 and 300 yards per game. This is what Jarquez is known for, is putting together solid games when you turn around, you're like, wait a minute, he already ran past 100 yards. That's what I literally did to my friend I was sitting with. I was like, when did he pass 100 yards? He's like, he's just been going after it and working it, and getting more carries this time. So people wanted more carries from Jarquez. They got it, and he made the most of it. This is, like you said, this is exactly what we wanted to see out of him, out of the play calling. Use the horse that you have, and he is quite the horse.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was kind of interesting, and maybe it's part of the wet nature of things. He had essentially two fumbles. One was in that kind of wildcat formation thing, and thankfully he got it back, jumped right on it, and got us the 4th and 1. And I noticed the next time we did that wildcat, it was Damari Austin in the backfield. So I don't know if that's going to be maybe they swap him out, or maybe just Jarquez got yanked because of that. I don't know. But interesting little observation there.
Yeah, I'm a little tired of Wildcat, and that's me as a big spread Gus Malzahn offense type of fan guy saying that. I'm a little burned out on the whole Wildcat direct snap thing going on these days. I like to, especially since we're having a hard time hanging on to it. So I'd like to see that go away for a little bit.
Yeah, I would too, and figure out other ways that you can push the ball just a yard. I mean, teams have gotten creative with that. I mean, even New Mexico had that, a very interesting. They kind of look like they lined up in that same formation and then passed the ball deep. I mean, they found ways to do it, and I'm sure Auburn can too. We just gotta do it.
Right.
Wide receivers. I mean, let's talk about them for a minute, because I mean, Hank Brown obviously had a good day, but he put the balls in the right spot for our wide receivers. There were really only a few errant passes, and I think only one drop that I can remember. So pretty all in all, not a pretty good day for everyone in the wide receiver room. I mean, one thing I did want to talk about was, and Jared wanted to point this out, was Camden Brown.
Oh yeah.
We hadn't seen a whole bunch of Camden Brown. Yeah. A Brown to Brown connection, Hank Brown to Camden Brown. And so one thing that Jared pointed out was Hank Brown has a connection to Camden Brown, just because they had probably had lots and lots of reps in the second team for a while and are pretty comfortable with each other. And Camden Brown got a little bit more action this game, likely because Cam Coleman's not in there, and it still is out with a shoulder injury. But do you have any thoughts on, like, is Camden Brown one of those rising stars that has maybe an extra connection with Hank?
Well, this is where I think we got to think back to the full story of Camden Brown. He's been one of those guys everybody's been touting, and there's a lot of hype around him. He's got all the size in the world. But I'm very slow and cautious to give direct, non-constructive criticism to people. But one of the things that I've talked about a lot is my frustration with Camden Brown for his lack of being able to close his hands around the ball. And that's been it's kind of an important thing for a wide receiver to be able to do, especially one of his supposed caliber. And that's been something that's happened his whole career. What can't be denied, we've seen some good moments for Camden Brown on and off the field this whole season. He was one of the guys that we pointed out on our social media accounts, throwing his arm around Peyton Thorne after Peyton's bad game, and acting like some of our fans should. Take a lesson from the people that you actually claim to love, or you at least act like some of them that you love. But also, Coach gave him a shout out, and I believe it was in the post game presser, that his practice that week was what resulted in him getting to play. Yes, you can say Cam Coleman opening up a slot, because we know Cam Coleman is going to eat up a lot of possessions and time for people, opens that up in some way. But he noted that his practice play that week is what brought him in there. So I love that he pointed out that it could be that Hank and Camden may have a better connection because they have been on those second team reps together a lot. And that's probably a small factor there. But to me, it's more on Camden. It's more on him putting in the work, showing up. Yeah. And that first catch that he had, he bobbled it, but brought it in, but eventually catches a dart from Hank in the end zone. So I love it. I love seeing guys that do things on and off the field, at least as far as we can tell, get rewarded. And so I'm happy for him. That's my phrase for this game. What can Brown do for you ×2?
Yeah, that was awesome. And I'm just curious, have you heard, is that the first time that a player with the last name has thrown it to a player with the same last name? At Auburn?
There's got to be at Auburn, I don't know, but there's got to be a Smith the Smith somewhere out there.
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
The most common name ever. I somebody look it up. We'll get Clint Richardson on that. He'll figure it out for it.
Yeah. Also, couple big things from the tight ends. I mean, I know we mostly hit on the wide receivers, but tight ends also showed up. Fairweather got a touchdown, broke some tackles, and found the end zone. Micah Riley, another touchdown from him. Unfortunately, in the tight end room, it sounded like Brandon Frazier ended up breaking his foot and is going to have some surgery done on that, which is obviously very sad because he has committed himself to this team and been around a long time. So
yeah, sad situation for him. The guy that doesn't get a lot of praise or a lot of notice, and he's sticking around with us for a long time and doesn't. Hopefully he'll get to come back at some point this season. It doesn't sound like it would be for very much of the season, if that at best. But hate it for that guy. Hate it for him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's transition into our defensive topics here. I think that defense in the first half obviously was right in kind of the thick of it, struggling. Apparently, the Lobos were throwing all sorts of things at Auburn. They had different packages, different things that they were doing that they had not done before in previous games. So they were throwing everything that Auburn had at them. And again, this is kind of first half struggle, second half figure things out, make the adjustments needed. And I'm as sad as the first half was for our defense, second half defense picked things up and really started to slow down New Mexico. Other thing, couple big interceptions, big takeaways on defense. Jaron Thompson, what a freaking baller. Literally mossed the dude, jumped over his back, pulled the ball right out of his hands. And I thought it was fake. I didn't think it was real, but by the way, Jaron Thompson ran over and he was like, I got that, dude. That was my interception. And it goes to review, confirmed interception. I was like, that incredible. Literally, he's becoming one of my favorite. I always feel like I pick one defender that I absolutely love. Jaron Thompson is becoming that guy for me this year.
Yeah, and if you just to kind of toot our own horn here, we run simulations on College Football 25 for you guys every week. The week for the simulation for that week, I think Jaron Thompson also had an interception.
Ooh,
and
that's fun.
A pretty big game as well. So I don't know, you might want to watch our simulations. Is what I'm saying.
I got a question? Did you beat Cal?
I didn't. So when I run the simulations, it's computers. I just run computers, and what happens.
But didn't you play one?
I did play one, and I did beat Cal.
No, you did beat them. Okay.
I beat Cal. Yeah. I every time I played the team of the week, I have beaten them. New Mexico got a little dicey last week, but hey, we made it. Listen, I was still dealing with the problems from the last week, and there were tons of Alabama fans watching that live that were just waiting to rip me a new one, but we got it done in the end. Here's what I'll say about whether you're talking about Jaron Thompson, and you got Antonio Kite on here as well. Both transfers, both guys, you were hearing from those other fan bases, Texas for Jaron, Alabama for Antonio Kite. Is like, oh, we didn't want him anyway. They couldn't do anything. So glad to see them come over here, choose the right side of the force, and come over here and start competing, yes, but contributing. Jaron's been there. I think Antonio Kite, there was some speculation maybe he could get lost in the shuffle, but with the defensive back group needing some people to step up in a way, really love seeing him get that interception in the game too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anytime in my mind that you get an interception, it's kind of like all of the hard work, all of the game prep is starting to pay off for those exact moments. And not to say that the others didn't do well, but the opportunity presented itself, and both those guys, Antonio Kite and Jaron Thompson, capitalized on it. And that's exactly what you want to see. I will say that just overall, my kind of the defense is not up to snuff as what I was expecting, because even New Mexico had 448 yards of offense. But thankfully, it was kind of I hate to say it, but kind of like the bend but don't break kind of defense. And we kept them out of the end zone for the most part of this game. And, I mean, in the end, you can have as many yards as you want, but if you don't score touchdowns and points, that's the other team's probably going to win. So
yeah, if you don't score more points than the other team, you're going to lose. So that's usually how that works there. The defense definitely underwhelmed. Coach has said it. We haven't heard from DJ Durkin directly, but his boss, his head coach, speaking for him, spoke about how he was unhappy with it too. I can only imagine what those conversations were like. It's also disappointing when they had such a rough start in the Cal game, but had such a great turnaround to not see that again. That's the problem with building expectations. People expect it. I think, again, people need to be less emotional, less panicky about these things and realize context. You brought it up. Coach Freeze talked about it today. There was a lot of stuff thrown at Auburn because they had a little bit of extra time for preparation and stuff. That's not to make an excuse, but it's just the reality of the situation. People have extra time to prepare. They haven't shown a lot. Most teams try not to show too much in their first couple of games, just so they can kind of have some element of surprise. So that's not unheard of for a team to have a little bit of success, even on the road, even in a tough environment like Jordan-Hare, just because they're playing it close to the vest until that point and throwing everything they think about it. Think about this could have been New Mexico's Super Bowl. I don't know if I would assume New Mexico State is their rival. It's an in-state school.
Might be. I don't know for sure.
What if they could pull off the ultimate thing with them? They wanted this one. They definitely did. So they knew probably their best bet was their offense because they got a terrible, and I mean terrible, defense. So great running quarterback. Everybody, it was the third game. About to play the fourth. Slow down. Stop being emotional. Don't be the stereotypical Auburn fan.
I'll say this. You mentioned their quarterback being a running quarterback. We held him to only 17 yards rushing. And I think that's a big credit to where this defense against, for example, Cal could not contain their quarterback and keep him in the pocket. Yeah. We made the adjustments in this week to keep their quarterback in the pocket. And I was happy to see one of the better kind of, stopping a running quarterback. It showed, and we knew that their quarterback wasn't necessarily going to beat us through the air. It was going to be with his legs.
Well, but then you saw him literally just chunk the ball into the air, and it would magically come down in the arms of one of his guys. And there were a couple of times it was busted coverages, but sometimes it was after some weird scramble he'd do. And, that's just going to happen. He was like, you know what, I'm just going to throw it up and see what happens. And boy, did it happen a few times. So it just made no sense. It's one of those weird things of being an Auburn fan on the roller coaster ride. We make Heisman Trophy winners out of, the worst of the quarterbacks out there. And not to say that he was a terrible quarterback, but just some of the stuff that was happening, it was just weird.
It felt weird. In the sense that I was looking, it looked like, hey, we've got these guys covered, and then you just magically find the dude open. That's just what sometimes happens, especially if you just buy yourself an extra second or two. The wide receivers can find their way open. So I feel like that's another point of our defense needing to get to the quarterback a little bit quicker. And really, I think this next couple of weeks when we face good SEC opponents is really going to tell us kind of where we stack up with that. Mm-hmm. Let's kind of wrap things up with our special teams conversation. And Towns McGoo still doing the kickoffs. Have you heard anything about Alex McPherson? Because I haven't lately.
Only updates we keep getting is that he's improving, but just waiting for them to get cleared by the doctors. Look, I know it seems weird that a gastrointestinal issue would knock you out that way. I need people to remember, if you've ever seen Alex McPherson, here's just my reaction the first time I saw him. I believe it was either A Day or a open fall practice. Watching the players come out of the tunnel, I saw what I thought was a child coming out, and I said, "Who's the 5-year-old?" And it was Alex McPherson because he's that tiny compared to everybody else. So he was already a small guy. Imagine losing weight in regard to this type of issue, which I have family members who have dealt with. I don't know his specific issue, but have dealt with a gastrointestinal issue and how it can deeply affect the rest of your health. You need to be careful. You need to be cautious about these things. Instead of, I choose to take great pride in the fact that Auburn not only has one great kicker, but two great kickers, and one of them is a homegrown talent, and one of them is a pedigree whose brother is doing great things in the NFL. So, folks, you could be Alabama, missing kickers or having kickers miss field goals left and right. You got two great ones. I want to see him back, definitely do, but I am so happy that our homegrown backyard kid Towns McGoo is having the time of his life, frankly.
Oh yeah. Well, and in most team situations, you have your starting kicker missing some time. It's a drastic drop off, and I feel like there's not a drastic drop off, which is crazy because Towns McGoo literally just signed with us a few months ago as a freshman.
And most of them are walk-ons. And this is a guy that signed. I would bring you back to Ben Patton, like the man among men, walk-on who had to take over for, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on who our last one was.
Anders Carlson.
Anders Carlson, who had broke something in his leg, and he had to take over in the Iron Bowl, and dude knocks down a 50-yard field goal to keep us in the game. You want to talk about being a man? My goodness, Ben Patton, you are my hero forever. Sorry, it's just I wake up at night just dreaming about that moment when it happened. I was so happy for him.
Man, anyway, I can just hear I can hear your like inner kicker coming out, and I love it. I mean,
I couldn't watch it. I could not watch it. I did not watch it live. I turned around. I said, I cannot watch this kid be put in this situation, in this moment, in this magnitude of the game. So I watched it after.
It's awesome. I love to see the backup kickers doing well, and Towns has stepped up to the plate in every way I thought he should. He's done kickoffs really well, kicked most of them through the end zone. I think he's only had a handful of them returned, and I mean that's what you want to see. He's kicked some field goals. He's been put the one time in that super long 50+ yarder field goal, came up short there, but I mean, most freshman kickers at that point probably aren't making that anyway. But hey, he has made, what was it? I forget. It was like 60 yarder in high school. So we know he's capable of doing it. I will mention, this is one of those like gripes on special teams, penalties, man. This is when it can hurt you. Like we had a great return come all the way back. Like the TV announcer said that there were penalties. It was a personal foul and holding on Auburn, and it pretty much resulted in about a 45-yard difference. Auburn was going to return, like, have that punt returned to, like, I forget where it landed, maybe the 30-yard line or something, and we get flipped on the other side of the field, literally the opposite side, because of penalty. That's just super annoying for a team, and you got to clean that up because that's momentum swing in a tight game down the road.
And let's not forget fumbles. We're talking about Keontae fumbling another one on punt returns, which is just weird. He is an amazing talent that can, when he catches the ball, can do amazing things with it, as he almost ran one back in the first game if he hadn't just barely, and I'm still questioning it, barely stepped out. But I need Keontae. I'm calling it. This is AJ. You just sit there for a second. I'm talking to you, Keontae. I'm talking to Jarquez. I'm talking to Damari. I'm calling in all seniors, whether you're a super senior, junior, whatever. The one thing that we can't have you all doing is dropping the football once you have possessed it. You are upperclassmen. I love you guys to death. I will sing your praises, but I cannot have this anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, AJ, thank you for obliging me. I just needed to speak to them for a second.
You're welcome. I was about to get on that same soapbox because as much as I love Keontae, I think I might be done with him at punt return. And
I'm
that's
not
sad
ready to be
because I know he's explosive. I said I'm almost. Almost.
But you want to talk about leashes? Everybody was like, how long does a leash does Peyton Thorne have? That was like the favorite phrase of everybody in the offseason.
Oh, yeah.
There is no leash left for Keontae on the next one, I think, is the nail in the coffin for him. As far as a punt returner, no matter how talented he is. That's just me as a coach sitting here not on a couch, but essentially virtually on a couch, saying these type of things. Coaches can do whatever they want. I agree with coach's assessment. He's too big a talent not to risk it at this point, but it's getting pretty risky. So whether we're talking, it's not even about Keontae. It's not about Jarquez. I just need all my seniors, all my juniors, my upperclassmen. I need y'all just two hands on the ball all time.
As somebody who has done punt returns, you almost have to go in there mindless in a way, and the best way possible, thinking I'm going to do either like you come in with no mindset or I'm the baller of the ballers. And if you come in anywhere in between those, you're going to fumble. You're going to have an issue because guess what? People are coming at you full speed and you could get crushed. So I'm just worried, honestly, about Keontae's kind of mental space with this, because if he's coming in anywhere in between of I have no thoughts in my mind or opposite spectrum, I'm a baller and I'm the best guy out there, I think he's probably thinking, I've tons of doubts in my head.
Yeah.
Dating back to last year with fumbling punts.
Yeah. And then we would be remiss as we're lamenting about these things just to round out special teams. Let's talk about something good very quickly. Jeremiah Cobb, 66-yard return, just that first kickoff, just great. Everybody wants to see more of Jeremiah Cobb, and I think this is one of the things where people need to really value seeing him, not just as a running back, but as just getting the guy on the field. You can compare this to Malcolm Simmons too. As you wrote in here in our notes, led to a touchdown. That changes the dynamic in any game, but especially in these games where you've got maybe an upstart opponent that you're supposed to be, but it's got a little bit of an edge to it. That's just a killer thing to have happen to them that early in the game, and it really starts putting them back on their heels. So kudos to Jeremiah.
Love it. And then Malcolm Simmons even had a great return to the Mexico State 43-yard line. So 2 great kickoff returns in this game. And I feel like I expected some of that against an opponent like this, but it's just showing me, hey, we've got potential out there. Come SEC play, we might have some of those big plays still left in us, and I sure hope we do.
Yes, sir.
All right, Kyle, before we get out of here, how can the people stay in touch with you?
You can find me on all the E2C Network content, apparently, because I'm even on this show, at least for now. And you can find me on X at KyleLemus24.
And you can find me on X at AJAYJAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.